Canada is becoming a third world country. Scenes like this are being seen across the country in major cities. People cast out onto the street, homelessness, garbage everywhere. This is the reality. Canada's depression is real and the politicians don't care about it. We're going to get into how Canadians cannot afford to eat in 2026 and how this crisis continues to get worse, even as the government knows that they're making it worse. So let's get right into what is going on. This is a food bank CEO, and they're going to tell you what's happening in the field.
To what degree have things, in your view, gotten worse?
It's shocking even to those of us in the field to see the numbers grow as they have. Since 2019, food bank use in Canada has doubled. These are community organizations that are showing up to make sure that their community members, their neighbors are fed. We're seeing an increase across the board. Troubling numbers include the number of children. So a third of those using food banks are children. We're seeing an increase in single adults who tend not to be seen in legislative priorities.
So there you go. Canadians cannot afford to eat. And then just look at this chart, because this shows what has really happened in Canada. In 25 years, you saw food bank visits go from 500,000 down here to around 1 million here in 2020. That was 25 years from 1995 to 2020. And then they suddenly go from 1 million visits all the way to more than 4.1 million visits. It's absolutely crazy to think about. It's like Canada is in such a depression right now, and this will be one for the history books. I'm sure that you are going to see in later history that comes about this that people say it was a depression. People were lining up at food banks. There were job lines. I mean, this is exactly the type of things that you saw in the depression. And Mark Carney has achieved one thing. He's achieved the growth of the food bank industry, which is an absolutely terrible achievement, but it's something that he's done. Take a listen to this. Cambridge Food Bank purchases new facility that brings added space to meet demand. So it's the demand. That's why they need to buy this 31,000 square foot facility. So they bought this facility because they outgrew the other one. But take a listen to this. The current space has been great for our community for 25 years. We have been thankful for it, but we outgrew it several years ago. I wonder when. Look at this chart. 2020, that was when they outgrew it, when it absolutely skyrocketed. For 25 years, it was fine. It's the exact same message that we see there. And people also can't pay their bills, which is just another red flag that you're seeing. People can't afford to put food on the table, and more higher balances on debt, and people are defaulting with these massive balances. Consumer insolvency is up 2.3% in 2025, hitting highest volume since 2009. Ask yourself, was that a good time for the Canadian economy, 2009? I don't think so. That was a terrible time for the Canadian economy. And then you've got this as well. We have become a necessity, says Windsor Essex Food Bank Association president. Again, different place, similar sort of message here, that they're just expanding at this unbelievable pace because of the demand. Take a listen to this. The association had 235,000 visits to its 15-member food banks in 2024, with 30% of visitors being children. That's just a terrible, terrible thing to say. Absolutely horrible, but it's the reality of what's going on. And likely now in 2026, those visits are even higher based on what we already know about the Canadian depression and how it's unfolding, how more people are losing jobs. And this is another thing, because this plays into the fact of private equity circling round, ready to push up everybody's rent. You will own nothing and be happy. Rents are already rising, and it's affecting people's balance sheets, and they're heading to food banks. So what is the dystopian future that is coming for Canada? And Mark Carney is key to that. We'll get to that in a second. They work full time. They have degrees. They're still going hungry. Students, seniors, all going hungry here. Take a listen to this. A senior who had worked his entire life calls a food bank in Montreal. He tells staff staff he is embarrassed and only needs a few basics, milk, bread, something to get him through the week. And then shortly after, this is just horrible, a mother arrives explaining that she started eating less so her children could eat more. I mean, that is just terrible, isn't it, when you really think that people are being driven to do stuff like this because they do not have the money anymore. The time is running out. The Canadian Depression is here in 2026, and this is the reality of it, whether people want to face up to it or not. A large chunk of Canadians, over 4.1 million, are heading to food banks. So absolutely insane. And then a student juggling 2 part-time jobs comes in near closing time, apologizing for the trouble. The rent increase was higher than expected, and after covering transit and utilities, nothing is left. And guess what, guys? Again, BlackRock is just holding the gate open to billions of dollars flooding in to the housing market in Canada to drive up rents for people. And then how are they going to afford food? How's this going to work in the future? But this is the dystopian future that Mark Carney is well aware of as he pushes through this. New federal grocery rebate will cost $12.4 billion. So think about that. $12.4 billion heading into where? The food supply. All that money will be chasing food in the food supply. And guess what? The government, they printed that money because they're running deficits right now. So they don't have the cash. So what does that mean? That essentially means that's new money which is chasing all the existing food products. Meanwhile, the federal government hasn't added any food. They've done nothing. They're just taking away. So what that means for everybody is higher food prices. And Mark Carney is well aware of it. He's a bankster. He's been in banking. He's got an education in economics. He knows all this stuff. This is basic economics.
It said there's a contingency.
But he doesn't care because he's still going through with things like this that are going to drive up the cost, not just for the people buying the food who can't afford it, but for everybody else who is already struggling in Canada. So it's absolutely crazy. And then you've got this rising food bank visits show more Canadians are at risk of homelessness. And that is so true. We're going to see in a minute. The data shows you that that is the truth of what's happening in places like Ontario as more and more people are being left on the street. I mean, this is the reality, guys. This is the reality for a lot of people. It's absolutely terrible to think about and imagine, but the Canadian dream is dead and Canada is becoming a third world country. It's certainly starting to look like a third world country in certain places. And then you've got more evidence that Mark Carney knows what he's doing is going to inflate food prices. In a report released yesterday, the Bank of Canada quietly confirmed what many of us have been saying all along. Ottawa's counter tariffs on imported food from the US contributed to higher food inflation in 2025. You see, for these politicians, it's all about polarization. They don't care if they're doing good or bad anymore. It's just what their voters think. They're trying to win emotion and they're not trying to do what's best for the rest of the country. And meanwhile, they're looking down on you and they are elitist people living these luxury lifestyles completely disconnected from reality. They don't represent the working class people anymore. They are completely disconnected with the working class. And then you've got this as well. When it comes to media propaganda, I don't think any country can beat Canada. So absolutely crazy. CTV puts here, Carney wins admiration globally, but struggles to lower food costs at home. I wonder why. He's pushing another $12.4 billion through, which he knows and understands will bring up food costs for most people. These are the bare necessities of what people need to function and survive in society. When people can't afford food, that is a sign that your economy and country today is collapsing. That is a sign that you are a third world country. At the end of the day, many third world nations in Africa, people struggle to afford food. You wouldn't think it, but a place like Canada is becoming very similar to those nations, unfortunately. And then you've got Juno News. Canadians struggling with soaring grocery bills and inflation may be shocked to learn that Prime Minister Carney's in-flight catering is costing taxpayers a small fortune. We're not shocked. We know that this is what the elites do. Mark Carney, globalist bankster, he knows exactly what he's doing. He's helping open the door to these globalist corporations that are going to drive up the cost for you. That's exactly what they want. You will own nothing and be happy. They want you to rent everything. They want everything on subscription. They want you controlled through things like digital ID. And with a central bank digital currency, the distribution of things like the grocery rebate becomes much easier. And they're trying to ram that through with things like digital ID. And then is it any wonder that things like this are happening in Canada?
Some new data from Statistics Canada shows a sharp decline in fertility rates. Back in 2023, Canada joined, quote, ultra-low fertility countries like Japan, South Korea, and Switzerland. And this new data is offering insight into why. CTV's Harrison Shin joins us now to break down the numbers.
So Canada's fertility rate is dropping through the floor, and this is a major red flag for any economy to have. It goes to show that people don't want to have kids, and why wouldn't they want to have kids? Think about it. It's because the prosperous life doesn't exist. The Canadian dream is dead. So what do they want for their kids? What do people want for their children? They want a better life for their children than they had. And when that can't be a possibility for people, they say, I'm not having kids anymore. And that's exactly what's happening in many Western countries. But Canada, as you heard there, is leading the decline on it because it's in a depression. And then as I mentioned earlier about homelessness, it's up 8% in 1 year. Nearly 85,000 people are homeless in Ontario. That's the population of a small town. So that really shows you what is going on. I mean, it really shows you've got the population of a town in Ontario that is homeless. So this isn't a dramatization. This is a lot of people that are going hungry and are on the streets in Canada, and they don't want to go into shelters because they know how unsafe they are, full of mental people and people doing drugs. So it's absolutely crazy. And then people are waking up, not just in Canada, but in the United States as well. They know that the economy is not as rosy as they're being told by the officials. And the reality is the economy is getting worse for most working class people. Half of Canadians, Americans think their countries are in recession. The poll also suggests that 39% of Canadians who are currently employed are worried about losing their job within the next 12 months. And again, that reflects badly on the rest of the economy because they're not going to spend money, which further just worsens the economy, and you get into this vicious circle. And Canada is entering the doom loop phase, which is not good because when you're in a depression like this and you enter a doom loop, things get even worse. And you can see the poll was conducted between February 14th and the 17th and surveyed 1,550 Canadians and 1,000 Americans. The survey says that 50% of Canadians and 51% of Americans polled believe both countries are in a recession. Again, just showing you what's going on. And they talked about job market worries. Well, with the latest report that came out for the job market in Canada, the unadjusted data, as we went through on this channel, was absolutely horrific. And you can see it here. Public sector jobs were down. Private sector jobs, though, they were down nearly 250,000 jobs. That is a massive, monumental hit for jobs for a country like Canada. When jobs are evaporating that quickly, it's no wonder that you are seeing food bank visits explode. But as we went through here, it's seniors, it's students, it's all types of people who are going to these food banks because they can't afford food. People are working 2 jobs and they still can't make ends meet. They still cannot afford the basic necessities. And landlords, they should be equally worried about this because, quite frankly, how close are these people to not paying their rent? Many of them are not paying their rent, and that means that people can't pay their mortgage because the landlords are all leveraged. They don't own most of these units. its cash. And meanwhile, you've got private equity funds on the sidelines ready to pounce and take advantage of the miserable situation that is unfolding in Canada. But it is good, at least, that people are beginning to wake up in Canada and in the United States, and that they know something bad is coming. It takes time for this to work its way through the chains of income. It starts off with the lowest income, and then it works its way all to the higher income people, who also get affected by layoffs and also get affected by the rising prices and the pressures that other people are facing. Because with $12.4 billion going into the food supply, we know that the cost of living crisis that exists today is just going to get a lot worse, because the government's answer to everything is just to print more money, and they do this being educated and knowing full well of the consequences that will happen as a result of their reckless spending. I want to thank you so much for tuning in today. If you've enjoyed this video, please check out this video here. If you want to help support my work in this channel, please check out the links in the description below. Sign up to my free email list, published some great articles on Substack recently, and I will see you in the next one. Take care.